I see a red light. Hi boys and girls, it's me Butch. My name is Terry David Silvercloud. You can do a search of me if you want to know more about me. I'm the kid that never grew up. I'm 74 years old. Today is the 18th of March. Spring is almost here and days are longer in Vancouver. Thank goodness. The nights get very long and dreary here on the coast in the winter, but Wednesday we might be up to 20 degrees and I might go out to Wreck Beach and let it all hang out and start my summer tan. So today, because I haven't made a video in a while, I thought, I should make another video. And so I'm making a video. I try to be useful in my old age by trying to spread a bit of knowledge among the humans for whom I hold little hope, but you never know. I'm a physicist by nature, a photographer by trade. I paint in my old age to keep busy. Painting's a hard sell. Painting's out of style. Where was I? So today being a nice sunny day, and I was sitting having a puff, thinking, I should make a video, and I was thinking about what? And I was thinking about the color green. Green, St. Patrick's Day and all that happening. And I thought, I'll try to explain to you why leaves are mainly green. Why is that? And I'm a physicist, so I don't much care about all the chemical reasons. So you can tell me it's because they have a lot of chlorophyll in them, and chlorophyll is green. Well, yeah, so when you're a physicist, you want to be able to rip off the mask of God and look inside and see what's going on in there. So why green? Why is chlorophyll green? Why is that a good choice? And why does that work so well in so many leaf forms? Well, in the world of physics, green is a frequency, except there's a whole bunch of greens, aren't there? There's light greens, dark greens, yellow greens, bluish greens. That's because there's all kinds of frequencies. And what you need to know about light is it's a radio wave, just like radio waves are radio waves. So is light. But we humans and most animals have dual antennae right here. Those are radio wave receptors. And because the waves are just the right size, not too big and not too small, we can lens them with things like glass. Light slows down a little bit when it enters a denser medium, and that's why it bends. That's why lenses work. So we can, with our eyeballs, focus on any particular spot we want and aim the light at the thousands of antennae that line the back of our eyeballs. And we have two basic types. One type is for black and white, and one is for color. But the basic thing you need to know is they look sort of, see on the bottom here, this thing here? They look like a long cone, and some of them are called cones, and some of them are called rods, because they look like rods and they look like cones. And they are about 1 micron long. Now, micron, if you can get your eyeballs feasted on this, oops, wrong side up. On the top there, those numbers are centimeters, and the little tiny grooves up at the very top, those are millimeters. So 1/1000th of one of those tiny ones is how big your little rods and cones are. And that's because the best antennae are tuned to resonate with the frequency you wish to capture. That's why antennae come in different lengths and sizes, because they're associated with particular frequencies or wavelengths. And colors occupy a variety of frequencies and wavelengths, and they're all rather conveniently in a band about 1 micron long or less. So that means the radio antennae in your eyes are perfectly designed to capture the radio waves that you think are color, but color is happening up here. There's no color out there. If you could see in radio waves or other things, your brain would have to come up with some other color scheme to work it out. But conveniently, our brain has chosen a nice thing for a color scheme. It works well for me. I like most colors. I'm not fond of garish metallic greens or metallic purples. I had some mushroom trips where there was too much of that color going on. I'm 74, I'm from the hippie days. I've taken LSD and mushrooms and peyote back in my hippie days, and mushrooms tend to conjure up hallucinations with a lot of earthy colors for reasons I have no explanation for. But I divert. I'm an old hippie. I'm your grandfather. Stay away from that man, he's weird. He did drugs. Well, so did a lot of people. Where were I? So green, there's a lot of greens, and each one is a different frequency, but they tend to be associated with frequencies or wavelengths between about 300 and 400 nanometers. And that's just part of that 1 micron part of your eyeball. So if a wave, if you could draw out a wave on a surface, where are we here? Jeez. See, I'm not going backwards there. A wave is not a complete wave unless it goes up and down from where it started and then back the other way and back to where it returned. And that is a complete wave. And a red wave, if this was a red wave, a single red wave, you can see it would nicely be an earthquake wave to shake the rod or the cone in your eyeball. Things resonate with waves associated with their own size. So if you live in a building between 10 and 20 stories tall, that's kind of risky when earthquakes happen, because earthquake waves tend to be between 100 and 200 feet long between each wave, and that causes the building to start rocking. And so if you're shorter than 10 stories, it's usually not too bad, and if you're taller, that's actually better, because it can get some counter waves going there if the building is built correctly. I divert. The point is, things resonate with waves, and I'm going to get around to talking about why leaves are green eventually here. How long have I gone now? 8 minutes? That's not too bad for a motor mouse like me. I'm going to talk a little bit about photons, because nobody knows what photons are except physicists, and some of them don't really know either. They didn't get into it, and they thought, oh yeah, I know that, but they didn't really stick to it, because there's photons and there's photons. In the world of quantum physics, the photon the quantum physicists worry about is the very tiniest one, which is associated with an electron, and the value of that photon, which is the tiniest photon which we can measure at this point, is a number called the Planck constant, which is an extremely small number, times the number of times you rotate that thing, basically. So if you increase the frequency, it takes more and more energy to make whatever that thing is spin, or to make it move, either way. But oops, let's get back in focus here. Oops. Should have turned the autofocus off, I guess. So photons, unfortunately, because of Einstein, got associated with light, and even more so with Star Trek type movies with photon torpedoes. A photon is a unit of energy associated with a given frequency. So there's zillions of frequency all the way from 1 up to your Wi-Fi is up into gigahertz, which is hundreds of thousands of cycles per second. Very, very, very fast, and the wavelengths are very, very, really small. That's why they don't go very far, but it's all rather convenient for a phone where you don't need it to go very far anyway. And as long as you have a nearby radio tower called a cell to pick it up, you're good, and it relays it to all the other cells. That's how cell phones work. You just have to be near a cell, and if you're too far away, well, you're out of luck. Where were I? So a photon's got associated with light, but any radio wave has its own photon. And you can think of a photon as a ball of energy associated with the wavelength of a wave that has a wavelength from here to there. So a green photon or a blue photon, let's pretend this is a blue photon, and a red photon would be of different size. That's because a red wavelength is longer than a blue wavelength. So they each have, and for practical purposes in measuring things in physics, it's all very nice to be able to count the number of balls flying around. If we know how big they are, we can count them, and we could even tell you how many of these kind of photons are inside of one of these kind of photons. But a photon is directly related to the Planck constant. You can look it up. It's a number. It's not so constant because it keeps being upgraded a bit, but that's just because we're getting better at measuring things. It's just getting more accurate decimal places because it's an extremely small amount of energy. And it's the amount of energy associated with the smallest thing we can find, and we associate it directly with the electron because it's the smallest solid particle, which we use for measuring everything anyway. And we couldn't even function without electrons. You would not be able to see, smell, hear. It's why we can't go faster than the speed of light, because our brains are measuring things at the speed of light already. So if the information were coming faster, it would probably just seem like blinding light coming at you. I don't know, but you wouldn't know. It would probably be very dangerous. I'd get out of the way. Duck for cover. The photon torpedoes are coming at you. That's the whole point. So if you have like the Starship firing a photon torpedo, what it's basically doing is hurling an electromagnetic ball of energy through space, and you would require enormous amounts of power to do that, and some really fancy engineering to make sure that the actual gun didn't blow up your entire ship in the act of actually firing the torpedo, because boy, that could be dangerous. But we have pulsed lasers, and pulsed lasers are basically photon torpedoes, just very small ones. So, we're developing small light guns, which are lasers, and they're not just a continuous beam. In order to get the maximum power per punch, they get it going as much as possible, and then punch, a bunch of laser beams, and to get as much juice in each little bullet going out. They are photon torpedoes on an extremely small scale. Once the humans bump that up to warship size, which isn't very far away, I'm sure the Chinese, Russians, and American are working full scale ahead on developing that type of gun and testing it. But you need to have a nuclear powered ship because you need a lot of juice to fire it up, and a lot of way of dispersing of a lot of heat really, really, really fast, because it get really hot. Where was I? Why are leaves green? Well, chlorophyll doesn't cut it. How much time? Oh, 14 minutes. Jeez. Cut it short, David. So you need in a leaf something that resonates at a useful way. Why green? Well, it turns out that there's a whole lot of substances, and chlorophyll apparently is one of them, where if the photon that hits it and goes geschmuck, where were we? Over there. See? This is a ball of energy, and this is a leaf hitting a molecule of chlorophyll. If the molecule of chlorophyll was about the same size as this green photon, the chlorophyll could not get out of the way, and it would take the blow full on. And it turns out in photoelectric cells that a wavelength of around 386 nanometers, which is conveniently a green wavelength, is the particular amount of energy required to knock an electron out of its orbit in certain types of materials, and you'll know them as solar cells. So solar cells have a particular structure where particularly if a 386 or a 300 to 400 nanometer photon struck it, that is enough energy at that time to cause an electron to leap out of its orbit. And if you had a net to catch it and say, "Come here, boy, you're off to the, come here, son, we're taking you to the battery jail. You ain't going home. We're going to be using you." And the other energy from the point of view of the cell, it would gain it back energy anyway, would be possibly heat. We don't want to go on down that cell, but the point that's really important is that the particular wavelength required to knock an electron out of its happy little cozy, I don't want to go anywhere spot in the chlorophyll molecule and in a solar electric cell just happens to be a particular color green, or any of them associated just either side of that particular size of green. So a good size for if a leaf needs energy from the sun, it needs to be a solar cell, and it is. The chlorophyll is the solar cell, and all those electrons, instead of going off to a battery, go off to become part of new molecules, which for the tree or the plant is a kind of sugar. And normally those sugars will just be carried off to the interior of the plant or the tree to be consumed, just like you and I, when we eat a candy bar, it goes to our stomach, and the sugars are converted to energy. We burn them in our cells. It gets in our blood, and that's what's keeping us warm. We're burning sugar. So do the plants. So if you get a tree, how long have I got to shut up soon? 18 minutes, my goodness. So if you get a tree like a maple tree, it can only handle good weather, and it has a very short season. So it's got to get as much energy as it can. So it has big, broad, flat leaves that are green. So it's sucking up the energy as best it can, but those leaves are so big and thin they can't survive winter, and they'll just freeze to death and fall off. Where you get certain plants that have waxy green leaves, and that wax will protect them from freezing during cold winter months. Now if you get deciduous or coniferous trees, fir trees and spruce trees and Christmassy trees that stay green all the time, you'll notice their needles are long and narrow, and they're usually waxy, so they can survive the cold weather and through the winter, and they're extremely efficient at gathering light. So when you look out there, you say, well, why aren't those Christmas trees bright green? Well, in winter, they're sort of in the hibernate mode, and they're not doing much but absorbing whatever heat energy they can. And heat is sort of towards the black end of the spectrum. So the coniferous type needles are very good at absorbing any energy they can lay their hand on, and they're just not reflecting much of anything back. And definitely not the green of the chlorophyll. The green is the vibration of the molecule of chlorophyll. That tells you that a molecule of chlorophyll has to be, it has no choice, between 300 and 400 nanometers in size. To give you a comparison, I better not get into that because I have trouble converting millimeters to feet because I'm old school. A nerve cell is approximately 3 microns across, and your eye is 1 micron. So 1 micron is a thousandth. Boy, there's a mouthful of a millimeter. And I'm up to 20 minutes, so I gotta shut up. So this was supposed to be a fast lesson in photons, frequency, and the reason leaves are green is to enable the electrons to power the tree, and the only way the tree can do that is to capture the energy from light, which is between 300 and 400 nanometers, approximately 386 nanometers long, that wave, to cause electrons to bounce out of their orbit, which the tree's leaf and its mechanism can then use to power the making of the sugar. It's sort of like when you go to tap your card on a machine, wherever you tap your credit cards, that machine is radiating energy. Your card doesn't have a battery, but there's a mechanism in there in your card, a radio receiver, which captures some of that energy being radiated by the machine, and it's used to power up that chip just for a moment. Say, oh, I'm getting a signal, it wants to know my PIN or something, and it transmits it back, and at the speed of light, of course. But it's the same idea. So I'm now up to 21 minutes, 22 minutes. Butchy Poo is going to shut up. I hope it was useful. If you think I'm an idiot, I don't care. I just say what I want to say. A lot of people don't believe me, you know. I'm this old guy. Yeah. So I urge you to check out anything I say. Don't believe anything I say. Why would you with all that fake news out there? Butchy Poo is all about being real, and you want to find out about me, check me out. I'm not your average pea in the pod. I'm a really nice guy, but really reclusive. Kind of like that Sheldon Cooper guy, but geesh, I wouldn't want to be him. So that's it. 22 minutes. Shut up, David. Okay, bye-bye from Butch. I gotta turn this thing off now. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Hope the sound is okay. Bye.